In every society, men have sought to escape suffering. For pain is the one constant that humbles both king and beggar, and when new methods arise to sever the individual from the memory of sorrow, people embrace them as if they were salvation, but they seldom perceive that in discarding their own scars, they open themselves to a subtler form of enslavement, for no man remains whole once he sells away the proof of his endurance, and no prince can command others if he has trained himself to forget the very lessons that hardship alone can teach. Thus emerges the curious and dangerous black market of memory, where fragments of the human past are bartered as though they were spices or jewels, and in this commerce lies a truth that few are prepared to confront, that memory itself has become both currency and contagion, a thing whose possession alters the soul of the one who carries it, and whose absence weakens the one who discards it. For sellers approach the exchange thinking themselves liberated, when they part with the humiliation of a failed love, the burden of an unworthy job, or the endless grief of an early death. But liberation gained by subtraction is never complete, and the man who abandons the memory of failure also abandons the wisdom it carried, which means he may stumble again and again on the same stone because he has forgotten its shape. Meanwhile, the buyer, often a desperate artist, a famished writer, or a seeker of intensity, enters the trade with the illusion that pain can be borrowed as easily as a book, and that by purchasing the agony of another, he acquires insight without enduring the storm himself. Yet such men fail to understand that memory is not merely information but infection, not a cold record of fact but a living flame, and once it is kindled inside the mind of a new host, it burns with all the fury of the original suffering, leaving scars not earned but inherited, and in this strange exchange both seller and buyer become vulnerable, one by weakness of forgetting, the other by corruption of false experience, so that only the broker, the mediator, the one who handles the fragments without appearing to claim them, imagines herself immune. But here Machiavelli warns that no man who traffics in poison can escape the stain upon his hands, and no ruler who plays with contagion can expect to remain untouched by its disease, and thus the broker of memory, who thinks herself cleverer than seller or buyer, is in truth walking a rope strung across the abyss, for she profits from both weakness and hunger, yet knows that neither side can ever afford to expose her, and this safety is fragile as glass, shattered the instant she acquires what was never meant to be sold, the memory of a crime that cries out for justice. When she receives not the lament of a broken heart or the dull ache of wasted years, but the suppressed guilt of a murderer, the very foundations of her neutrality collapse, for she is no longer merely a trader of shadows, but the unwilling custodian of truth that could topple reputations, alter fates, and expose the machinery of the market itself. And this truth does not remain silent, for guilt is not a memory that sleeps but one that scratches against the conscience, seeking release, and so she finds herself haunted by nightmares not her own, tormented by sensations she never lived yet now cannot escape, the sound of the victim's last breath, the metallic taste of blood, the tremor of the hand that struck the fatal blow, and worse, the lingering shame that eats at the soul of the killer, a shame so profound that he sought to amputate it from himself by selling it away. Yet in amputating guilt he did not cure it, but merely transferred the infection into another vessel, which is the broker herself. And here arises the paradox Machiavelli would urge her to recognize, that by possessing the killer's memory she now wields leverage greater than any army of soldiers or treasury of gold. For in a world where men fear above all the collapse of their reputation, the exposure of a secret crime can unmake even the mightiest, but the cost of wielding this power is terrible, for the memory devours her peace, corrodes her body with symptoms not her own, and drags her into a hell where the boundaries of self dissolve, until she cannot tell where her own conscience ends and the murderer's begins. Yet Machiavelli teaches that fortune favors the bold, and when ruin is inevitable, one must choose the form of destruction that serves ambition rather than awaiting chance, and thus the broker faces a choice between silence and speech, between suppressing the fragment to preserve her livelihood or using it as a weapon to reshape the balance of her world. For if she sells it onward, she becomes complicit in the concealment of murder, and forever enslaved to the contagion she has circulated. But if she reveals it openly, she not only condemns the killer, but reveals the existence of the market itself, inviting the wrath of those who have built fortunes upon it. Yet if she is cunning, she may find a third path, to wield the memory not as confession but as leverage, to blackmail, to manipulate, to turn the guilt of one into the submission of many, and in doing so elevate herself from mere broker to master of those who once considered themselves untouchable. The lesson here is broader than one woman's struggle. For the entire system of memory trade illustrates the principle that men, in seeking to avoid suffering, often create dangers more fatal than the suffering itself. For the sellers, by amputating their pain, become creatures of glass, brittle and untested, while the buyers, by importing foreign sorrow, become riddled with fractures that were never their own. And in this diseased ecology, the broker alone seemed to stand above the rot, but even she could not remain immune, and thus the market itself proves unsustainable, for it feeds on the very substance that makes men strong, their scars and their struggles, and replaces them with weakness and contagion, so that all who participate are eventually undone, unless one arises who learns not merely to trade memories but to command them, to transform guilt into weapon, sorrow into strategy, and trauma into dominion. And this, Machiavelli would argue, is the true opportunity concealed within the danger. For power does not come from forgetting, nor from wallowing in pain, but from mastering the meaning of memory and bending it to one's will, even if the memory was not originally one's own. Thus the broker who carries the murderer's guilt faces her crucible, to break beneath the weight of a crime not hers, or to seize it as her banner and declare that she alone can decide whether the truth will rise or be buried. And in this moment she ceases to be merely an intermediary, and becomes instead a ruler in her own right. For the guilty will fear her, the sellers will need her, and the buyers will seek her, and all will discover too late that the woman they thought a neutral broker has become the sovereign of their most intimate possessions. Their very past, for once memory itself, is subject to commerce. The one who holds it is master not of objects but of souls. And the greatest cruelty of all is that she never desired this throne. Yet in a world where all men flee their scars, the one who dares to bear them becomes unassailable, even if those scars were never hers to begin with.